Alright, so discussing some of the response on a video I posted earlier. We've had some really good commentary there. Redoing this video a couple of times, I got kind of a funny text from somebody here. But talking again about the relocation of rural areas and economic reality. Some of the big things I'm seeing that end up being kind of expensive is the land. Okay, that's a big deal. And I don't think the individual family model is sufficient for these things. It puts too much work on too few people in too short of a period of time. And that's where the participation of part-time people becomes so critically important. The question at that stage then is, what is their relationship going to be with the full-time thing? And successful models in the past don't necessarily include the type of ethics that we want to have in a retreat community. For example, a lot of people would have a family-owned resort, bed and breakfast, RV park. Those things all work for the family unit. They work very well for that group because they would say, okay, we have friends that we would invite here. But the thing is, that the location is going to benefit more from the construction and contribution of people on a barter basis than it would if you're trying to earn the money, then pay people to fix it up. It can muddle along that way, but it doesn't stay as open to somebody who's doing a labor barter type of situation, but it can work. The problem is that we end up with this lack of a fairness doctrine in the way a lot of the social interactions work, when the foremost in a lot of people's minds is, okay, how is the rent going to get paid, or how does the rent work versus what the labor rates are. And then somebody's, there's a lot of haggling over what somebody's bringing to the table. Now, we measure what somebody's bringing to the table. It's definitely measured and it definitely counts. But when it becomes an issue of negotiating and haggling and disputing and all those types of things, well, then there's the haggler's tax on a lot of this, isn't it? It's a question of, okay, let's, where are we going to agree, and should we disagree, and should we renegotiate later when we've got the upper hand? All of those things really need to get sorted out in the early stages of this, so that you don't have people who are invested 5 years into it and say, listen, we've paid $10,000 rent over the last 5 years. We've done a lot of labor, a lot of improvement here. We agreed to come in at a lower wage because we thought we're going to be permanently members of this community, and we're not. Then it's perhaps not quite fair to everybody involved. The same goes for the landowner. If the landowner says, hey, listen, I've let everybody live here for free, but now I'm getting older, I can't work as hard, who's going to take care of my house? Who's going to take care of my needs? Because I could have been renting all this out, or I could have sold it at a profit, but I was letting this community live here. What's in this for me now that I'm older and I'm not able to work as much? All those things really need to get sorted out, and that's why we have to have sustaining population and all that. A lot of times the way this might end up is a little bit more of a corporate structure, and registering these as a corporate nonprofit or a low profit or something like that. That can be one of the ways these work. But a lot of the traditional methods of the family-owned place, where all of the social interactions and business interactions outside of this or even within it are really engineered just to benefit one particular family, then I don't think that's plantation ownership. That's not quite what we're after on these things. And that's where you really need to address the rent and the wages type situation. And that's where co-ownership, communal ownership, I think is really the only answer on these types of things. And you're going to have some people that are contributing more than they're getting back. That's the way a lot of this goes. And when you do have people that are contributing more than they're getting back, then there has to be at least some recognition and appreciation for that, especially when a lot of these groups with the younger people or the people that don't own real estate, I can't retroactively go and ask my last 20 years worth of landlords for the $150,000 back. Okay, I can't do that. Likewise, if you're going to enter into a new relationship with somebody in a church organization or a co-survival type organization, and you're paying rent on this, well, what's it really going to? Are you just financially supporting the core family, or are you going to become a stakeholder and a part owner in this thing? Or does it go to the central, in something of a communist fashion? It goes to the central planning committee. These people vote on where that money goes and what it maintains and what gets spent. All of those things have to, they have to factor in. But one of the things that I don't think is going to work for all that many people is where you simply abandon everything, go pay your first, last, and the deposit on a rental in the country, and then start homesteading when you don't even have a sharecropping agreement, let alone it's not homesteading if you don't have a pretty solid ownership stake in the property. Likewise, moving out to and living at somebody else's homestead location, you have this whole back and forth thing between who's a stakeholder in a particular business thing, or if you're going to be taking care of the cattle. And there is no money in that cattle, there is no money in the chickens or the poultry until maybe some of it goes to market. You don't want to be reduced down to, you're working for food. Well, gee whiz, you can go on food stamps, and if you're frugal about that, okay, now we got food covered. Okay, you put people on food stamps. Okay, where's the money going to work? How do you measure what you're getting ahead? And I don't think we can just demand that everybody's payback is going to be an intangible. Of course, there's another thing that somebody brought up here, security. How much security is appropriate? How much, we would hope that there's going to be full-time people, caretakers, or somebody takes turns at the place. If it's everybody's part-time place, we would hope that somebody's allowed to take turns. If somebody says, well, there's a main house and then there's little cabins, but we can't let people be there because they're not really an owner in this, you get a lot of mess with that. In the Bible it said don't muzzle the ox that treads the grain, but then again, if you how cool is it that somebody's going to be around your stuff? That's a question. I would say it's not cool to abandon the situation. If you don't have somebody full-time in a situation, that's definitely a scary situation to be in, because even in non-shit-hit-the-fan circumstances in a lot of country places, I had a friend in the Ozarks, I had survival stuff with him, and he was, he was middle-aged, older, not necessarily in the best health. He had a heart attack or a stroke while he was cleaning his guns. His gun safe was open. He was taken to the hospital. It was among his local friends and family, not these so-called strangers on the internet. Local friends and family decided to have a pre-mortem custody battle over his stuff. And so he was in a hospital for a few weeks. I think around 5 weeks, I had posted a video after the fact because we noticed that he disappeared from a forum. We were all participating in a forum. He had disappeared. I said, hey, it's been a little while since we heard from this guy. I started calling a number, started trying to find out what's going on. Turned out he was in a hospital. While he was in a hospital, somebody from among his friends and family went and cleaned out his house, and then they wouldn't tell him, they wouldn't fess up the stuff. Some of the stuff there wasn't his. Some of it was mine. And some of it was stuff that's kind of hard to get a hold of again. And so I suffered a loss on that. Other times that we've had, I had stuff, all planned. Somebody was, well, we're going to have everything in a storage locker place. And I went in one day and somebody had moved me out of that storage locker. And the rent was paid, everything was there, and they said, basically, if you report this as a theft, if you make noise about it, we're going to sue you for defamation. I had another situation where I built a cabin on the property. The financial deal fell apart for the property transfer, and I had to go and evacuate stuff from the area. We moved to another location. And we go back and they're starting to want to put keep out signs on the property because they said they sold it to somebody else. Nobody talked to me about this thing until it was like, oh, okay, here's a warning, here's after the fact. I never got a notice for this thing. There's a lot that can go wrong in some of these circumstances. I had another friend who bought a property in Northern California. The tweakers, the local tweakers and criminals, would literally, they introduced themselves. They came up, they threatened him, are you a cop, are you a Fed, are you this, are you that? That's usually one of the indicators that maybe you're not just dealing with libertarians who want to be left alone, you're probably dealing with criminals. And they were meth lab people. And they just waited they knew how long it took for him to go to the store and get back. Is basically, they had it figured out how long it took for him just to go to the grocery store and get back. And they're watching with binoculars. They would wait till he left, go steal from him. He'd come back, stuff would be gone. He could file a report at the sheriff's department. It didn't matter, I said, thank you. You filed a report. They wait for him to leave. It got to the point where they unbolted his well pump and took it. They knew. They know, okay, he's leaving. They'll unbolt his well pump. They'll take it. You try putting game cameras up, they steal those too. And that particular guy wasn't much of a gun owner. Right? He owned a couple of guns, but the way they had the law where he was, people would say, well, you can't use your guns just for property, to protect your property. It's only to protect your life. They'd literally go and carry his stuff away. And they were tweakers. They were messed up. They'd dare him to shoot him. And said, well, if we're in trouble for stealing from you, you can go ahead and call the police, but if you shoot one of our people, that's a violent crime. You're going to go to prison. We'll come back and steal the rest of your stuff. That's the way they thought. They're drug addicts. There's a lot that can go wrong with these things. A lot of the way to avoid that, though, is to have it involved with a group of people. It's the only thing. And you have to have somebody there full-time where the place is occupied 24/7. It's a rotation of people. And if you leave for only a very short period of time. And you have to have some trust and control over who has access to the property. Under those circumstances, it's the only way it's going to work. The more remote property, the more important it is to have somebody there full time. Now, whether or not you're paying somebody to be a caretaker, or you're making some sort of a deal to be for free rent, or maybe they're just the actual owners and the part-time people, or doing some kind of a part-time contribution, those are all the things you got to work out. And that's where it helps to be members of a community, to have open lines of communication that are hopefully frequent and a lot of face-to-face as you get involved with these things. One of the things that I would recommend is, as you get involved with these people, have an exit plan, especially in the earlier stages of it. Have an exit plan. Have certain benchmarks that, if a new person comes in and you say, okay, we're going to set certain benchmarks. If these benchmarks aren't met by certain dates, we might have to consider you back on probation status or kick them out or something like that. The same goes for benchmarks on my end. If I'm coming in with a place, I'm going to still, everything I'm contributing, I want to have my name on it. We're going to keep track of what's mine, yours, and ours. And I still have trucks and trailers that if I feel that, okay, this isn't going to work, I got to load everything up and pull out. Now, I don't want to pull the rug out from anybody. I'm not trying to take the critical elements of something and leverage that to take advantage of people. But these are all things to consider, because I figured out a long time ago, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this alone. There's no way I could do this with just a wife and one or two near adult children. And it's not really fair to them to say they got to give up all their other career choices out there to hoe and rake in a barn and be homeschooled and not have a real education, and especially at the upper levels. I mean, I understand homeschooling for your basic reading, writing, arithmetic, but I've seen situations where people were grown up intentionally kept ignorant or misinformed about the world. I don't want to do that to anybody. So there's a lot of complexities to factor out in these things, not the least of which is to make sure everybody's going to have a good, fair, um, participation in economy when they're in one of these places, and not just simply living subsistence. I mean, we want people to live better, and not really be giving up something of true value when they go from the city to the country.